Hello and welcome to Top of the Class with Grand Canyon University's College of Education. I'm Emily Pottinger.
And I'm Dr. Meredith Critchfield,
your hosts. So this is part 2 of a special 2-part episode on supporting our students' mental health during trying times like we're in right now. So if you haven't had the chance, be sure to check into part 1 of this fabulous episode. There's so much to glean from our experts that we have on the episode this time. We've had so many requests from you all on how to support our students' mental health during crisis points, crisis times. So we need this topic now more than ever, but not all of us are experts in the area. So we brought in the experts to help us.
Yes, we're excited to learn from them. And this, as you know, is that part 2. And so if you want to know more about them and learn more about their bios, definitely check out part 1. They are fantastic experts and fantastic all around humans, if I must say so. So welcome, Dr. Stephanie Nilsen and Dr. Crystal McCabe. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, excited to be here.
For having us.
So welcome to part 2 of this special 2-part episode. In our first part of this episode, Stephanie and Crystal helped us unpack so many great strategies for us to best support the mental health of our students at varying levels, various age groups. And I know I speak for Dr. Critchfield and myself that we learned so much from them just in that short amount of time. So let's continue our discussion and expand maybe even a little bit further. I know both of you have that special education background as well. And for me, I know I always lean on my special education educator friends since I taught general education, but had lots of students included in my classrooms with various abilities. So I definitely always had my special education friends that would kind of help me through some of these things. So what can we do for our students with different abilities? For example, what about our students with ADHD? How do we support them right now, specifically in their mental health?
You want to go first or I'll go first?
Does matter.
Go ahead, Crystal.
With students with ADHD, they are struggling greatly with executive functioning. So as a teacher, any chance you have to be able to help them in that area, thinking about just helping them with transition, helping them with organizational skills, and realizing that obviously with everything that's going on right now in the world, there's that added anxiety that's just possibly even making those behaviors larger, you know? And so the more that you can proactively be helping them with those pieces, lots of praise. I know that Dr. Nielsen mentioned this in part 1, but opportunities for choice will really help to start to reduce some of that anxiety and help them really to be able to stay on task.
Mm-hmm. Great suggestion.
I kind of looked at and very, very similar, but thinking about breaking things down. So, so many things we kind of just assume that our kids are managing on their own. So things like transition, things like being able to work through a whole, worksheet or whatever it is. And I think that we have to be very, very intentional about breaking down things and identifying the skills that maybe that individual kiddo is struggling with or missing at that point. And so, in fact, there are so many cool tools out there for this right now, particularly from a mental health perspective. So I saw a YouTube video called Lockdown Productivity, which was so good. I shared it with all of my students because it breaks down how to set up your environment to support your mental health. And I thought that's something we never think about. How do I set up my desk and my house and my kitchen and my, and then my routine to support my mental health. And having it broken down helped people go, oh, that's where I'm struggling. And so I think with our kiddos really saying, okay, what is it that I need them to be able to manage right now? And what are the skills that build to that? And then intentionally teaching to those skills.
And I love that you guys mentioned, the assumption part, because I think sometimes if we don't have the background in some of these areas of special education, it's easier for us to assume from a general ed lens that all my students should be able to know X, Y, Z, and that's just not the case. All students are coming from different backgrounds and have different levels of understanding. So I love that you said don't assume.
And We know there's a big variation with the next group that we're going to talk about, which are students with autism. There's a whole range, right, of experiences those students might be going through right now. But what would you guys say are some ways that we might be able to support students who are on the spectrum?
When students have autism, routine is so very important. And so whether the students are coming back to the school, even though it might not be exactly how they remember it, trying to get them back into a routine. If they're still at home learning, helping the parents or the guardians, whoever's working with them at home, to try to mimic that school setting as much as possible, different tools that they might have been using, same manipulatives that might have been being used at school, to help really create that sense of routine still for them. Additionally, with social stories are so impactful with this population, especially to help them understand the pandemic, understand what's going on, understand the protocols that are now in place, and why do I have to wear a mask, and why are our desks this way, or why are we, walking this far apart from each other? Really just helping them to understand the world that they're in.
One thing that I thought of, particularly for this group, is kind of those individual needs and the sensory processing. I think that a lot of our kids, we kind of had a good picture of what their unique processing is, right? And what things set them off versus what things really help. And I think that we need to really recognize that the context has changed so much that we kind of have to throw that out the window and sort of start over. Because, masks are just a great example that there are so many ways that a mask can impact an individual based on their unique emotional setup. So, sensory processing, even kind of social. Some kids just really hate how they look in them. And I think that really looking at the variety of ways that some of the new experiences are affecting kids, as well as some of the things that are missing. So maybe they used to always get the bus ride to school, and that gave them a lot of that bouncing, loud experience, and they're not getting that anymore. And so how can we really break down and assess what is it that they're missing, and what is it that maybe they're getting more of that's working or not working, and kind of rebuilding that kind of view of how they're processing and what they need.
That's helpful. And then with us as parents or guardians who are at home, because we do have a lot of listeners who also happen to be parents, what can we do to support them if they have students with different abilities and are in the midst of this really trying time and struggling with mental health? Like, where do we go? Where do we start?
I think one of the most important things is that time connecting. And with that connecting, like a lot of we talked in the first part, was being able to express emotions and being able to honestly sort of talk about the things that are happening, being able to provide control, having that real lens and understanding of what it is that they're seeing and feeling. And that happens through that connection, that I always call it the gleam in the eye, the, oh my gosh, I love being with you connection. And finding a way to get that every day. And it's not always positive. It can also be, unhappy, right? Sometimes we connect because we're both crying and we both understand how hard it is, but having that real emotional relationship-based connection is going to open the doors to a lot of support and understanding each other and feeling fortified.
I read a study once that reminded me of what you're saying, that it's not necessarily about the quantity of time you have each day, but it's the quality, those connection points. So you could have 8 hours that are meaningless, or you could have 1 hour that's incredibly intentional, or even 5 minutes that's incredibly intentional and connected. And that's going to mean more to a child, especially in these traumatic situations, than hours that you're not really connecting. Dr. McCabe, what about you?
Exactly what Dr. Nilsen said. And so when you're connecting with the child and they're starting to express themselves, however they're expressing it, I think it's very important for adults to not downplay the emotion. I think especially when we're stressed ourselves, it's easy to be like, oh, this is what's wrong today, or, oh, you lost the game. Oh, it must be the end of the world, and then we get into, what did our parents say to us, or our grandparents, oh, when I was your age, I walked to school uphill both ways in the snow and whatever it was, and and it's like we downplay that emotion, but realize that these kids have not had the same life experience as us.
Yeah.
They don't have the same skills that we have. And so to them, this is a devastating moment. This is, a very heightened emotion for them, and it is very real. And so we want to like hear that emotion, let them have that safe space to be able to express how they're feeling, how things are going. And then you have this opportunity, again, I know I mentioned it in part one, as a teacher, but also as a parent, to share skills with them. I mean, who doesn't want to share some, hopefully we've developed healthy skills by now, but when I'm feeling that way, I like to go for a run. Do you want to join me on a run? Or I like to take a hot shower, but you're actually telling them, like, matching that emotion with a coping skill that's hopefully positive, and giving them that opportunity to start building their own tool set there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading, that resonated with me because I was reading something about how to react to, a child's feelings and reactions to things. And one of the things that I'm personally dealing with is when Elliot, my little guy, is scared. And so he's now learning to express, Elliot's scared, and it's so heartbreaking. And my first reaction is, don't be scared. And you want to just say, don't be scared. You don't need to be scared. But this article that I was reading, it actually said the opposite. And it's just a reaction. You just want to say that, but said, you don't want to necessarily say, don't be scared, but acknowledge that feeling and that emotion is there. It's okay that you're scared. Mommy gets scared sometimes too. I'm here, give them a hug, all of those things to acknowledge the fact that they're experiencing that emotion, and then trying to help them process through it with those strategies like you guys were saying. So that hit nail on the head for me right there. So what happens, you guys have given us so many helpful skills and ideas and tips, but what happens when we're just lost as educators and we feel overwhelmed and we just are at a point where I'm like, I've done everything that the experts have told me to try. I've exhausted all options. What do we do when we're at that point? What's the immediate thing that we should do when we're kind of at the wit's end?
My first thought is teams. Go find your team, whoever your team is, whoever has the expertise in the, is the appropriate person to help and express the concern and start working together.
Yeah, just like, if you taught a lesson and a student didn't learn it, you wouldn't just go, well, I guess that kid can't learn.
Yeah.
You'd go and you'd consult with another teacher and say, hey, what have you tried, or what else is there maybe to try? And then just teaming that up again with that self-care. You're no good to everybody else if you're trying to fill from an empty cup. So making sure that you're taking that time to take care of yourself, because as you do that, that's going to start to remind you, you know what, this wasn't the last option I had. There are other things that I could be trying to do.
It's interesting how it's like, we know we need that partnership and the team, but yet we still plod forward and try and go at it alone. So just this reminder of being together, I think is so helpful.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is a wrap for our part 2 episode. Dr. McCabe and Dr. Nilsen, you have brought us so many different pieces of wisdom to take away, and we are so happy to have you on the show. We hope everyone, all of our listeners, enjoyed this as much as we did. Thank you so much. We also want to thank GCU's Worship Art Studio and the development of Top of the Class.
Yes, Dr. McCabe and Dr. Nilsen, again, you guys are so awesome. And I just feel enriched from listening to you in part 1 and then in today's episode in part 2. So thank you guys, as a parent, as a professor, as somebody who is an educator and just loves humans. This has been super helpful. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that said, if you want to rate or subscribe, we would certainly appreciate that. And if you have requests for podcast topics, please let us know. That's how this topic came about today. Tweet us at GCU_TOTC. This has been Top of the Class with Emily and Meredith. And until next time, go love.